Welcome to the Empathy Avengers podcast, where we put empathy into action.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Empathy Avengers podcast. Today, we're honored to be joined by Heidi Siegmund Cuda, an Emmy Award winning journalist, the host of RadPod Truth Survives. Radicalized Truth Survives is the full name of their podcast with Jen Stewartson and Hi Fi. You can find them on YouTube, and we'll put a link in there as well. She's also an author and recently an executive producer for Person Human Safari. So, welcome, Heidi. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you so much. And also, I know you guys from Betty Dangerous from my Substack.
Yeah.
Happy to be here. Good to see both of you. And I think what you're doing is incredibly important, probably even more important than you even know. So excited to have this chat.
Well, and honestly, the idea that got me thinking about empathy was it came from Heidi originally, probably at least a year ago. You coined the phrase mega, make empathy great again. And that stuck in my mind, obviously, till today. But yeah, it really got me thinking how far we've gotten away from empathy.
Yeah, and it's by design, because part of this whole outrage farming is a way in to radicalize people away from joy and love and kindness and reality and nature and their families and all good things. And I actually interviewed somebody yesterday, a commander of the Georgian National Legion in Ukraine. He's been fighting in Ukraine for 11 years, leading a couple thousand troops, primarily from the country of Georgia. And the first thing he said when he met with the Betty Dangerous community was, "You guys are all here because you have empathy." And I thought, this is a man who, this particular guy, his name is Mamuka. He's been in war for 32 years. He's been primarily fighting Russia since he was 14 years old. And for him to acknowledge that the people who showed up to hear him and listen to him all had empathy in common was quite a beautiful moment for me because I think it's true.
That is really beautiful.
I think empathy obviously has been weaponized against a lot of us and our heartstrings, right? And what we care about, and they've manipulated us. But in a way, I think what is missing is that empathy is no longer championed, right? Like you don't get awards for having empathy and you don't get promoted and you don't whatever, get a lot of money because you have a lot of
If anything,
empathy.
you're put down for being weaker because you have empathy, right?
Oh, absolutely. My God, this is all a playbook. I've been writing about this playbook for a decade. I'm German American. I know the signs, I've studied it ever since I was a kid. I used to have German relatives come visit, and I was kind of obsessed as a kid to understand what happened in World War II. Keep in mind, I was born in the mid 60s. It wasn't that long after the end of World War II. And that war kind of never ended in my house because my parents had post-traumatic stress disorder. It was nobody talked about their trauma at that point in time. They both left Europe very young. They were war refugees essentially, and there weren't words for trauma and transgenerational trauma, but you felt it. There was just kind of like this sort of ever-present kind of fear that came from, my parents growing up during war. So there weren't words to put to this type of trauma, essentially. But the fact is that without empathy, without truth, without kindness, without a sense of community, without the basic golden rules of loving our neighbors and doing unto others, we are really opening ourselves up for basically the end of the world as we know it. We need all those things. Those are things that actually government, when it's functional, helps with. It's those safety nets that we rely on, so people don't have to lose everything. And so right now we have billionaires telling us that empathy is not good. I know, Mindy, you probably know that Elon Musk has called empathy a fundamental weakness.
Yeah.
Again, these are things that we already see that they're aligning more with authoritarianism, and authoritarianism is going to tell you that that person over there is not, worth anything. Their life is devalued, and then everybody can turn their rage and all their anger at whatever they feel cheated in life, directing it towards somebody else. And that's very, very dangerous. And those are the times in which we live. And we have to realize that, again, without that kind of love, that empathy, even self love, we are really, really in trouble as a society.
And Elon has even calling empathy suicidal. Just, 2 weeks ago, the terrible murder of Charlie Kirk, Heidi and I talked about it offline. Heidi is super conservative and curates whatever incomes to her. Like Heidi doesn't own a TV, she doesn't watch the news. Her friends know that we will warn her and get her approval if we're going to send her something.
So I don't want to have to bleach my
Oh.
eyes. I'm very, what my friend Stephen Douglas calls it, incoming troll radar. Like, I'm very cautious about what I allow into my sphere because I'm a veteran news producer, and I used to have to go into go into work and pray there wasn't a bombing, pray I wasn't going to have to look at raw footage, and that would be my weekend, or what would carry on for another week, and then determine what could go on air and what we wouldn't put on air, because once I see it I can't unsee it. So I'm very careful to stay away from news porn, murder porn, war porn, trauma porn, all the porn. Like, that is not my jam. I'm super careful. I like to fill my world and my day with not only good things and beautiful things, but a lot of reading and history and music and things that sort of strengthen and nurture me as opposed to taking me down. And that is not to say I succeed, because I, will still doom scroll because I need to get some of the facts. And you have to wade through the sea of shit, now can I swear, to get to the people who are bringing the good information.
Even though we're both super careful, we saw that terrible up close footage of
Yeah.
Charlie Kirk being murdered. And it was horrific. Like you, I stay away from horror movies and that kind of stuff because it stays in my brain and I overthink.
Mm.
And so, I had to talk to my therapist about, how it was playing over and over in my mind. And
Yeah.
it was really traumatic.
I'm so sorry. And for the
Yeah,
record, I do love a good horror movie, but that is like, art versus
it's different.
reality. And I've seen enough of reality. I too was stumbled across, I don't seek any of that stuff out. But of course, part of what Elon Musk has done and what Hi-Fi is called the $44 billion psyop cannon to our minds is allowed the proliferation of war porn, murder porn, porn bots, whatever they are, all the bad things that seed into your psyche. All that Twitter is basically a propaganda channel. It is absolutely what was predicted in my writings 3 years ago, that it would just be like a Russian propaganda channel under the guise of social media. So I too saw the horrific, shooting, and you can't unsee it. And again, like, I'm old enough where when Elvis died, there was like one paragraph in the New York Times, there was this exploitation when the 24/7 news cycle of pain, what I call it, evolved or devolved. And I always look at Anna Nicole Smith as kind of the before and after, because I was working in news at that time, producing news. And the death of Anna Nicole Smith was milked for like 8 months, maybe 12 months. Everything that they could do to exploit the death of that woman for ratings. And so that's kind of where we are. And the thing is, we know this isn't good for people. We know that there has been a desensitizing going on. And I think it manifests in the war in Ukraine, where you have Russian soldiers who are terrorizing people, civilians in their homes and communities with drones. And I'm sure they've been desensitized a long time ago. It must be really easy to kill somebody by remote, and not think anything or feel anything. But if we don't get empathy back and we don't get concern and love for one another back, then that is the dystopian future that science fiction films have been predicting forever. And I'm still feeling the feels from an interview I did with Peter Pomerantsev a few days ago. Hi-Fi and I interviewed the author of Nothing is True and Everything is Possible, and This is Not Propaganda. And it's completely distressing. A couple things that I'm still thinking about is there's no market for truth. People aren't particularly interested in truth. They find conspiracy more exciting. And therefore, conspiracy then basically has the same sort of, base level as facts. So that's like a huge problem. And the other problem is that we could have fought all this. We could all be inoculated against information warfare, against all these cult dynamics, against all the horror crap on social media, but it wasn't going to turn anyone an instant profit. So we just
Yeah,
didn't.
right.
So here we are fighting and clinging to reality within our own communities, and we're losing people because Americans do not have inoculation against information warfare. And so, it's up to people like you and podcasts like this to sound the alarm.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I have an anecdote that I think applies here that I know somebody, and you guys have talked about Twitter, but I think it's true for all the social media platforms, right? And so my anecdote is about Facebook. I know somebody that works there, and they were making this tool, like an AI overlay to help generate potential ads. So it's an automated tool to make ads. And so they were trying it out, and they tried it out on my business page and gave me some examples and said, "Oh, what do you think?" And out of 6 different potential ads, 3 of them had the word warning in all caps, like at the beginning of it. And it was political activism type of page. So they were capitalizing on some of my protest footage, and they were like, warning, your city. And it was like LA, something was happening in LA. And it's like, your city is going to do whatever. And it was just crazy. Like I said, why are all 3 of these, 3 out of 6 are bad, like warning, warning, and with exclamation points and stuff. And he goes, "Oh, well, because that's what people click on, and those are the
Yeah.
ads that are gonna get more traction, so that's what the algorithm is automatically gonna spit out, an ad as a suggestion to get you to go for it, and it's gonna get people riled up." So there's no empathy. It's all about anger and fear and,
Mhm.
getting everybody
Yeah.
riled up so that then they go and do something horrible to their neighbors.
Yeah, that's a great example of fear and ignorance being weaponized. I mean, one of the things about traveling through Europe, which I've been doing for the last few months, is pretty much everywhere I go in France, people are just reading books. Like they're sitting in parks reading books, they're on the metro reading books because we've allowed our society to become somewhat post-literate. The playbook that I write about that Mindy was talking about earlier, where I'm always looking at what happened in history. I mean, all my best friends are historians essentially, and I'm reading every single book I can to try to see what's happening historically to apply it to today. And you can't actually Marcy Shore and I, who's an intellectual historian who's really amazing, she wrote a book called The Ukrainian Night, which is very important about the Maidan revolution. She will say no two moments in time are alike, but you can find your sort of reference points to kind of get your grounding on what exactly is happening. And I find when I do that, that's when I get my sea legs. And that's why I wrote right after the Charlie Kirk shooting, like right when it happened, I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew that they were going to turn this into a Horst Wessel moment. He was the first martyr of the Nazi movement. I knew exactly what they were going to do, and I got up as early as I could. And I didn't write about Charlie Kirk. I wrote about what the Nazis did to elevate this murdered Nazi as a martyr. And by the time I sent the article in the morning, literally Elon Musk was using the exact same words that they had used to turn and mythologize horse vessel. Exactly the playbook. Like I was just like, this is, they're not even trying to obfuscate what they're doing. But back to your Facebook example, the person who created the like button doesn't even allow his kids to go to schools with any tech involved. He knows what he did. I don't think he set out to do it intentionally, but there's a Guardian article, I think from 2015, where he basically, Mr. Like Button regrets. And he talked about how his kids go to a school without, any technology. And it's like, must be nice, but not everybody, is able to send their children to a school that would be as revolutionary as going back in time and not using the connected world. And, you know, all the work that we do at RadPod, it looks like the weaponization of the internet was, from the very beginning. That remember that beautiful like utopia we were promised with a connected world. It looks like the bagmen came from autocratic countries, and the people that they propped up these companies with were already compromised pretty much as young men. And we now are dealing with how to resist under a techno fascist surveillance state. And again, I go back to Peter Pomerantsev. He's like, America did it to itself, because I see all the external forces that have targeted our country. And that is true, but because we had all the ability to fight back, to use our judicial system, to prosecute people who were basically behind attacking our democracy, and we just didn't do it. And so, again, it kind of puts us in this weird place where it's up to people like you and grassroots activism and independent reporters to keep on figuring out a way out. Because again, when you're raised by immigrants, as I was, it's just like love of country is just embedded in you. And I just can't accept that this is how democracy ends. That's just, it's pathetic. Like, it's unacceptable.
I totally agree. I will fight
100%.
to my death to protect and save and bring back democracy here in this country. And I'm just a nobody. I'm a regular person. But we did see a pretty good showing of democratic principles when people canceled their Disney Plus and Hulu subscriptions in droves because of standing up for free speech, which is number one, the number one amendment in this country, right? And people who have been mostly checked out of politics and they know that
Yeah.
I'm really into it, so they just kind of don't. But they reached out to me. They were like, "What? Jimmy Kimmel is
Yeah.
old?" So I do think that when they overreach like this, then hopefully that wakes people up a little bit more, although we need a lot more of that. But
Well,
Yeah.
that is really a great point, because one thing that, if we're going to say that we didn't fight because there was no profit or no immediate profit in it, well, then we can say that what is really driving all of this? Well, of course, there's power. What always drives autocratic regimes, power, the desire to stay out of prison for all of the, corruption and fraud, etc. But really, money at the end of the day. So if you can hurt them financially, that is, rule number one. And honestly, one of the reports that I wrote was on Václav Havel, who was an activist and the first president of Czechoslovakia when the Soviet rule ended, largely because he helped lead something called the Velvet Revolution. And he was always encouraging people. The book that I wrote about was called The Power of the Powerless. People think they don't have power when they go up against these corrupt regimes, and it is daunting. And we see in fascist countries how reporters go to prison and activists go to prison. We see what actually is happening. But in numbers, when people actually decide that they are going to take something on like this and they can hurt these businesses or these businessmen financially, that is powerful. That is something that can be done. I know people kind of say, oh, national strike, do it. Do it, like literally. And honestly, how often has Trump walked something back when it wasn't popular? Like all the time. Like he will walk back, all the time. So when there is pressure applied, I call it reality TV fascism. When the optics, aren't looking good for him, he will walk it back. And the walk back, as Ruth Ben Ghiat said, that too is politics. But we have to figure out how, in a surveillance state, with the platforms being owned by those who are leading us toward autocracy, we have to figure out how best to fight back. Because I don't think the old methods are safe and will necessarily work. If you look at countries like Georgia, where people have been protesting in the street every day, I think it's noble and I think it's incredible, but I worry about people because, of course, they are using surveillance techniques and people are getting door knocks and they are disappearing. And we know that I call her Goose Step Greta. We know that Christy Nome et al., they're not playing. Talk about somebody who needs an injection of empathy. Start there.
She already has a lot of
Sure.
injections, I think, in her face, so maybe we need.
Well done.
Oh my goodness. But you know what's interesting? You bring up a good point about capitalism, right? Like I think that the Nazis, they were successful because it ended up being, I don't know if it was a communist, but like they didn't have as many of these big corporations that are trying to have a say in all of the capitalism that we have, right? We have all this technology now, which is owned by these rich guys. So as this march towards authoritarianism and fascism happens here in the United States, I guess I'm still an optimist, or I'm trying to be. And I think that they're going to hit roadblocks like Disney and capitalism because Disney needs us. So Disney has to listen to us, we the people, because we pay Bob Iger's salary, right? Donald Trump is not paying Bob Iger's salary. So if you use that as an example, and maybe it's TikTok or Facebook or any other number of examples that can come up here in the near future, I think that capitalism is key. I know one of our other empathy Avengers has been talking about Twitter because Elon Musk bought Twitter and he didn't care about the profit anymore because he had so much money. Like he doesn't matter. So that's where you get over the Rubicon or whatever. Like, but Bob Iger and Disney and the shareholders, those guys still care about money and they need to take care of us because we're the ones that are going to the parks and watching the movies and subscribing to the platforms. So I do think, with some exceptions, because Elon Musk has too much money, we never know what he's going to do. But I do think capitalism, in a way, is going to be maybe what saves democracy. I know that sounds weird to say, but in a way,
No, it doesn't at all. No, I think that's really an interesting insight. I will. Again, what I go back to this Peter Pomerantsev interview. Please watch it. It's Brad Pod's most recent interview. Radicalized Truth Survives on YouTube, episode 148. He's like, you have the talent, you know how to do this. You've got all the best people, all the best minds. All you need are like a few businesses, a couple of brave philanthropists, and people want this. He said the polling shows that actually people want this. People want to be united over great things and doing great things again. So no, I think you're absolutely right. There's so much to unpack there. But one of the things that we have been dealing with has been the what Nancy McLean, who wrote Democracy in Chains, calls the Koch cadre, and how they have been pouring billions of dollars to remove any obstruction to unfettered capitalism, even if that meant removing democracy. So at first in 2016, I thought for sure businesses were going to stand up. I used to be a business and economics reporter, and I, listened to every single grievance from every single CEO. But at the end of the day, they wanted to make money. They weren't all, supervillains. And they also were willing to, certainly in California, many of them pay the sunshine tax because you had great talent, great way of life. And I thought for sure these guys would push back against Donald Trump, and they didn't. And in fact, I did this thread called The Rogues Gallery, like all the billionaires who supported Trump. And really, at the end of the day, they all got a lot richer with their tax break. The one achievement that they got from Donald Trump was that big, huge tax break. And, they went from being a, single digit billionaire to being a double digit billionaire. So it was a very cold calculation. So I was, I guess I can't say shocked, but I was a bit devastated at all of the obeying in advance that we saw in the lead up to Trump 2.0. I thought, are you kidding me? Now, on the other hand, he's going full autocrat. So these companies that want to stay in business and want to not be nationalized have to kiss the ring. And I'm sure you guys saw Tim Apple, Tim Cook, in there handing him gold gewgaws. Like,
Well,
how humiliating was that? If we lose Apple, we are in big, huge trouble. So some of it's pageantry. They don't want to get on his bad side, but some of it's just simple old greed. But I do think you're right. If we can just find a couple businesses, a couple philanthropists, we can start to figure out a way to create alternative stories that are more engaging and exciting than all of this division and all of this anger and outrage. I really thought people would be very tired of being outraged all the time by now. And I figured they would be very tired of looking at, such a horrific person on the news all the time. But I don't think we're quite there yet. I think the cult dynamics are still very, very strong. The last thing I'll say is when the election first occurred, one of the first things I wrote was "Welcome to West Russia," which was a great phrase from Jim, but essentially what America would look like if it became like Russia in the 90s was the oligarchs running the politicians. And that is my concern. They have so much money, they're bigger than most nation states. But again, they're not without their flaws, their fraud, corruption, skeletons in their closets, and other countries smarter than America prosecuted their billionaires who were incredibly corrupt, and we need protection from them. I always say that the biggest ruse that was pulled on the American people was making them care about rich people's taxes. That was just the biggest ruse. The second biggest ruse was connecting Trump with the Republican Party. He's not a Republican. He's essentially a Russian asset in the White House. He's a Kremlin governor, and that's a problem for us until we
well, it's
figure out a way out.
not just the Republican Party. They've hijacked God. I mean, like they are now essentially
Yes,
pretending to be the poster child for religion, Christianity.
100%.
And it's so disgusting. It makes, yeah, I mean, it's sacrilegious, I would even say.
That was a dirty deal. That was a dirty deal. They struck a deal with Trump in 1.0 where they're like, we're going to help organize you and you give us what we want, which is the judges and the various laws that we want. And he came through for them. He's on the record saying, I gave you more than you even asked for. So, and he was sold to people of faith as an imperfect vessel who was going to deliver, all the things that they wanted. Yeah, it's hard having grown up religious to see many people I grew up with who went to the same Catholic school go all in on this guy. It's just that's some mean trick. When Bolsonaro was convicted of treason and sentenced to 27 years, it got me thinking about other countries that had done the same thing. So Brazil was able to convict their corrupt leader who tried to overthrow the government of treason. Ukraine was able to convict Yanukovych of treason. He, of course, had the same handler as Trump, Paul Manafort. And then I'm trying to remember what other country it was. I think it was South Korea. I'd have to check my notes, but it's like all these other
South Korea,
countries are
yeah,
able
South Korea did
all these
too.
all these other countries are like able to still get out on the street and get their convictions and overthrow their governments. And again, I go back to lessons from history, but Václav Havel wrote that Western consumerism was going to make everybody complacent and lazy and not even realize it when they started to become occupied by another country. And I feel like that's kind of what America's on the brink of. But I will say that the commander that I interviewed yesterday of the Georgian National Legion did say that he still believes in America. He still believes America is still the most powerful democracy and that the people of America just need to be reminded to fight for it. He doesn't think one person is going to completely destroy it overnight, but he says if we don't push back and if people don't fight for their freedom and their democracy that it can happen. So he had a much more optimistic view than I do, and I found it very heartening.
And we still believe in America too. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here
Right.
talking about how much we
Of
love our
course.
country and the empathy we need to inject back into it.
And
Yeah.
take it full circle back to the empathy.
Yeah, it's funny because since we've started this crusade for empathy, and maybe it is the sign of the times because people are craving it or, and feeling that it's gone. But I swear I hear the word empathy all the
I
time.
noticed that too.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised because we're starving for it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. People must be getting tired of being angry and holidays being so dysfunctional. And it's like, it's what is the cure for all of that? It's empathy, it's kindness, it's just a spiritual reconnection. And it's just when Mindy was saying, she had to go to the beach the other day. She had to just kind of like check out of news and just reorient yourself. And I think that that is something that we can all do universally. But yes, no, it is when somebody who has been at war for 32 years, when his opening comment is, "You are all here because of empathy." It's just like such a moment of just you can just feel the relief. You can literally feel your shoulders kind of we've been in such trauma and such fight mode for the last decade, at least in America, longer in other places, but you hear that word and suddenly you're kind of like it's like a warm embrace, a reminder of our humanity. And also, like Dave Troy said many years ago when I first interviewed him, that the way you change somebody's politics is changing their friends. And I've always thought about that. And what that meant to me was when there was somebody in my life that I was losing to this, I wasn't going to disconnect from them. I try not to. Occasionally, it becomes really hard. But you be their friend. You be their better friend. You be that person who is still there when they snap out of it. And Mindy will tell you that when people come back from whatever it is that they've gone through, whether it's like cult dynamics, whatever it is, there is a lot of shame involved. And so it's not like they're just, they grab a bullhorn and say, "Hey, I'm back." No, but if you are that safe place and that kind person, then that is a really, really great place to be because it might be you might get that first call when they're ready to return from whatever they were co-opted by. And as Jim Stewartson always says, no one brainwashes themselves. So having empathy towards those who are showing the horrible signs of radicalization, posting the horrible MAGA memes. That just shows that their brain has been co opted by slogans and they're not thinking for themselves anymore. And it's not easy to show them empathy. It's not easy at all. I have failed, but I always try. So when and if they're ready to come back, you might get that phone call and you might be that safe place for them.
Yeah. And, I was lucky to have Jim be that friend for me. And now through Jim, I have Heidi as my friend. And,
No.
it's, I don't even know the right word for it. It touches me so deeply that people cared enough about just some person on the internet to stand beside me and guide me out of it. It's an enormous gift. So
That's
on
so
that
funny
note,
because we're all people on the internet. The internet is real world. I mean, it's real life. That's the funny thing. It should never have been divided, and that is the flip side, the connections that you can make.
Well,
I
thank you
love you.
for reminding me and everybody, all of our listeners, about empathy and having and reaching out or being ready when people reach out to you if they are finally ready to sort of leave the cult or leave their ideology. And Mindy, especially, has been the best example for me and the inspiration that there are really amazing, wonderful, good people that are stuck in this horrible brainwashing scenario. I mean, there's a lot of really horrible people too. So,
Yeah.
but Mindy's one of the examples of an amazing person. And I didn't know Mindy before she, came over to the other side. But like, how awesome that we get to hang out with Mindy now and that she's such a great person and is paying it forward and continues to do the work, more work than a lot of people that I know because of the position and the situation she's been in. So I think that that's inspiring. It should be inspiring to everybody, hopefully.
I do try to remind because I get angry.
Yeah.
There was the shame. I went through that and now I'm just really pissed off. But I can't let that get through when I'm talking to people on the other side. I have to remind myself almost every day they are just like I was when I was trapped. So I need to bridge that gap somehow. And it's not ever,
That's
there
what
are
you're
times
doing.
it's not possible.
That's what you're doing. And one last thing. Those of us who do this work, we get attacked. And we get attacked by people who are inorganic or uncomfortable or for whatever reason. Jackie Singh said some beautiful words to me that really helped me deal with the psychological battery of continued attack. She's like, "What do you care what people say about you who don't love you?" So I'm just saying to your audience, when you come up against the mean spirited or the cyber militias or the paid operatives or just whatever, just what do you care? Keep doing the work, keep doing the good work, keep doing the good work that makes them so angry because we get empathy back, we get love back and humanity back. We win.
Exactly. What a perfect ending. We win.
Yeah. Love will always win. It just takes a minute, you know?
That's right. I've always said love is always stronger than hatred. Always. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up here.
I thank you guys so very much for
Thank
everything you're
you.
Thank
doing
you,
and
Heidi.
allowing me to participate.
Thanks again, everyone, for joining us for another amazing episode of the Empathy Avengers podcast.
Yay.
Heidi, thank you for joining us. You are an inspiration. And
Uh,
everybody, thank you for joining us for the Empathy Avengers, where kindness is your superpower and empathy saves the day.
The Empathy Avengers, where we put empathy into action.